I'm leaving this life while the going is still good. I'm still on my feet. I'm living independently. I have the money to buy good food and good wine, and I enjoy every day. I have lived well, and I've been blessed. And I want to, like my dad, die well. I don't want to live in wheelchair and bedridden, which I'm heading towards because of my paraplegia, which I cover in the last chapter. I just think that many of us are just not meant to finish out our lives in bed. I have an imaginary conversation with an old woman who lives nearby and sits occasionally on her porch, looking very unhappy. Do you have any advice about getting old? And she replies, don't. That's my imaginary conversation. Now, for those who are surrounded by family and love seeing their grandkids and the extended family, this doesn't apply, but that's not me. Okay, I chose the life that I lived of not having kids and living a culturally creative life. I don't want to take away from that very special quality of human culture of taking care of the bedridden elderly till the very last breath. Not at all, but I don't think it's for everyone. And there are just too many cases that I have seen of people doing their best to drink themselves to death or drug themselves to death or work themselves to death. And the problem with that is that we have such great medical care and tradition that people end up in bed. They collapse, they have a heart attack. But most heart attacks nowadays are non-fatal and just put people in the hospital and into long-term bed care. And so in our human and hominid evolution and our migrations, our movements, we occasionally had to leave the inclement and the elderly behind. And so we have the capacity to part with each other. And I'm feeling that. I've spent my life seeing my brothers, my friends, and we've all lived well. And that's all in California Boomer, my memoir. I have made this decision as a result of three major things converging in my life, coming to an end. Three major life things coming to an end. My creative life, this California Boomer memoir, my ability to stay on my feet and just walk, and my savings. So those three major life things. And so that's my situation, and that is why I'm making this decision. In the last month of my life, I have visualized this as a snow-capped peak, which I keep in sight. I talked a little bit about this in the last chapter because it's part of my meditations, but I'm hiking through forests and over ridges, but I'm keeping that peak in sight. And for me, getting to the top of that peak is getting to the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. That's the metaphor. Mother Earth at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. In chapter 12, I talked about how in my meditations with my eyes closed, when I go into that meditative, hypnagogic state, I see lines and shadows, and appearing in those lines and shadows is a diaphanous woman, a Venus figure that I see as Mother Earth calling me. She comes without my calling. She just appears. And this has happened hundreds of times with no previous thoughts of it. And so for me, it's Mother Earth calling. And here is a clip that I took from Will Smith's memoir, Will. He's quoting from his therapist.
The ocean is the ultimate woman, a magnificent feminine environment. If you can understand her, you'll understand us all. The ocean holds all the chaotic glory of Mother Nature.
For nearly 5 years now, I have planned this end to my life. I have visualized it. I have meditated on it hundreds of times, and I've collected a few thoughts on death from various media. This first one is a bit soppy, but it's powerful and it speaks to me.
Veteres lupinoscunt, quando sibi tempus sittere cedere. Maxima viri gloria constat, ex fine sua statuenda.
I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born, and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Mark Twain, one of the greatest Americans. And a surprising haiku from the author of the James Bond books, Ian Fleming. You only live twice, once when you are born, once when you look death in the face. Down the path from my house is a shrine to Francis of Assisi, the patron saint of animals and ecology. The shrine was built by my former professor who now lives there, Pete Richardson, whose seminars I took back in the 1980s. And he and his co-author, Bob Boyd, did these seminars that really changed my view of life and of humans, because it put the importance of culture on my radar, and that importance just grew because this entire project of mine, this memoir, is leaving my culture. And I'm not leaving kids, which are your culture plus your genes. The genes are much less important. People adopt children, and then those children take up the culture of whoever raised them. And so St. Francis of Assisi, I thank, because I'm going to be with his friends and my friends, the ocean community. And so I got to kind of laugh because on the Wikipedia page for him, he's also the patron against dying alone. But Padre Francis, I'm not dying alone. I'm down there with our friends, the ocean community, who will take up my body into the food web down there. I want to be honest that my resolve did weaken on taking this last journey, but I went back to my meditations. It was always when I was tired, and I went back to my meditations, which I cover in chapter 12, and that nearly 5 years old resolve came back every time. And to end this epilogue, prologue, I want to show some clips of life at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. As the clips run, I'm going to reflect a little bit on my experience of living the last 30 days of my life. If you are young or middle-aged, please don't do this. Go to meditation, get into that hypnagogic meditative state, get in touch with the inner self, the Great Spirit, and it will come to you what to do with your life. I promise. After a good long life, you will be able to do burial at sea and come and, join my friends anyway, who are cycling my nutrients. By that time, I would be long dispersed into the food web, nutrients from my body, and you can come and join us at the bottom of the deep Pacific Ocean. Eventually, only my titanium hip will remain on the Pacific plate as it subducts under the North American plate, and over I don't know how many millions of years will descend into magma that then is part of generating the Earth's magnetosphere and ionosphere that is important in protecting life on Earth from the cosmic rays that come from the sun and outer space. And then there are just little things that I just get frustrated at, and I have to tell myself, Don, let it go. You have less than 4 weeks to live. Don, don't worry about scuffing the bottom of your vintage Wrangler jeans. They're just going to be donated to Goodwill. My answer to that, well, what about the next person? I don't want the hems to be scuffed. Gotta love it. So I have to tell myself, Don, let it go, man. You have 3 weeks to live. It's not going to matter that you run out of vitamins or brown rice. Physically, because of my paraplegia, I'm very old. I'm like in my 90s. And so I laugh at myself because taking 8 steps over, should I do the kitty litter now, or should I make my herb tea? And I laugh at myself, such a big decision. Joe Biden, decisions, stress, you got nothing on mine. I was reflecting on my experience of losing resolve when I get tired, and I thought of the famous saying by the legendary NFL football coach Vince Lombardi, who in practices with his players pushed them intensely hard. which back in the 1950s was not as much done. And his famous saying is, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." And so I'm thankful that I was raised in a way that I could adjust my life in order to avoid extreme fatigue or long-term fatigue. I, of course, know that there have been times, days and weeks when I was fatigued, but you just have to push through those, and when you need to finish a job or do something you're committed to, but then you have the light at the end of the tunnel saying, okay, I'm going to get rested after this or that date, because I know that it's far too common in our society to push oneself and remain fatigued for way too long, and this can lead to depression. I've asked my brothers to please take care of California Boomer as if it's a child I'm leaving behind, a teenager, and she has to negotiate the internet in the next decades, since we don't know where the internet is going. And so she's going to need some advice or some management in order to negotiate this remarkable environment that we have come up with called the internet. The hardest part of this last 30 days is not the countdown to going into that cold and deep Pacific Ocean. I actually look forward to that release from this life, from this effort that I go through every day to keep myself on my feet. The hardest part has been trying to arrange everything to leave behind for my brothers, and of course doing it without giving away that I'm going to end my life. And I haven't told a soul. Our society is just not set up to let someone end their life unless they're in an advanced state of terminal illness, which I'm not. So I'm trying to get things arranged. There's a million things in a life when you think about it. And so I'm trying to focus on the important stuff and reminding myself that there will be loose ends. But I know that there will be a minute of pain after I go into the water. I'm not going to take an opiate to reduce the pain. I want to be completely aware in the last minutes of my life. My heart will take its last beats, a minute or so, and there will be pain. But I think of all of the sailors, nearly all young men who've gone down in ships, especially those who were contemporaries and friends of my dad's in World War II, fighting against fascism and for the American ideals. And so I look forward to getting down to have my body join the biological community at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean.